Welcome to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. I am Ray Whiting. With me, I have the lovely LeeAnn Lohman. And the guy who doesn't need any sleep, he needs 1 hour of sleep and he can run off of 4 days, Zach Franciscus. And the grumpy old man who I love to go against, Bob Quinn. Guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Ray?
I'm doing fine, I'm pretty upbeat right now. And
Good.
Things are pretty good right now. We are 27 days away from training camp. And again, all is quiet right now, but we're still going to talk Steelers football. And today, right now, this is the menu for today. We're going to talk about the offensive line, Arthur Smith's offense, Pat Freiermuth, and where he stands this coming season, and the all-time Steelers tight ends. So that's going to be a very interesting topic. So if you have any questions, please email us, send messages, type in on YouTube, share your thoughts. Okay?
You want to stick around for number 4. You're going to be surprised by that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Did we just do number 4 will shock you.
Surprised.
All right, guys, the Steelers offensive line. This is something that we have talked about. Well, we haven't talked about yet, but again, this is a pretty good topic right here. Right now, the Steelers right now, they have revamped their line. They have drafted 2 good bookend tackles, Broderick Jones and Troy Fatanu, if pronounced correctly. They picked up Isaac Seumalo from the Eagles in the offseason last year. And so Mason Cole is gone. And so we have Nate Herbig, So, guys, right now, again, the offensive line has been revamped. Share your thoughts on the revamping of the offensive line, and what do you think they will be, how they will look this year, in your opinion?
We have what we need. I just need to see the necessary improvement. If we just tread water, I won't be impressed at all. So it's not as much am I happy with the individual guy. When James Daniels is your worst offensive lineman, you're having a really, really good season already. I know Bob will expand on that a bit more. But overall, I need to see a big leap for me, not individual stuff.
Okay, so the number one thing that I'm excited about is to see Broderick Jones at left tackle, because he's a road grader. He played out of position last year. It's one of the biggest problems I have with Pat Meyer and subsequently Mike Tomlin, allowing him to waste a year in what was at best a throwaway year. Last year, yeah, we made it to the wild card thanks to some miracle play by Mason Rudolph. Would I have rather seen us end up 9-8 instead of 10-7 and miss the playoffs and Broderick play all 17 games at left tackle? Yeah, I probably would have, especially if I know we're going to get blown out in Buffalo again. But that being said, Broderick Jones, left tackle. Steelers have never had an all-pro tackle. I think Broderick Jones is the first one. He's a phenomenal run blocker. He gets push. He gets down the field. Pro Football Focus doesn't think too much of it at left tackle, but I think at left tackle we're going to see some really good things from him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I'm glad to see him where he's supposed to be. I'm glad it's not going to come down to some weird, crazy competition we don't need to be having. I know that all along, Omar Khan has talked about the offensive linemen and how one of their things they were really looking for was this idea of flexibility within these guys and adaptability to be able to shift around if they needed that to happen. So I appreciate that they did that with Jones and then subsequently with Patano.
Okay.
What about you?
Me, as far as Broderick Jones, yes, he is, again, a good solid bookend. I believe that they should have pulled Dan Moore Jr. out. And again, just stick him in there and Broderick Jones for the season. Yes, they danced, they played around with Broderick Jones, and I'm sure in some ways the Pittsburgh Steelers may have got a little bit burned because of the dancing and shuffling around, but you have to because of injury. But in this case with Broderick Jones, to me, Broderick has proven to be a good, solid lineman. Again, like Bob said, he pushes the line. And again, gives good protection to the quarterback, especially the quarterback's blind side. So as of right now, again, I'm pleased with the ends, the tackles right now. So again, I'm more concerned about the guard position, the right guard position. But because we are starting from left to right, let's talk about the left guard.
I want to say
Anyone else
Jones
just
came in
smile
last
when you see him?
year, not because of injury, but because Chuks Okorafor was benched. So it wasn't an injury that brought him in.
Yeah, for saying something mysterious that we maybe 10 years from now we'll find out what Chuck said.
We'll never find out.
Right.
We'll never, ever really know unless he retires and he wants to spill the beans.
Yeah, it always comes out down the road. It's Steelers 101.
We'll
20
see.
years from now, we'll learn Dan Rooney. We learned Dan Rooney, cussed out Bill Cowher. So maybe we'll find out what Chuck said.
That's true.
Oh.
When I look at Seumalo, I think as of right now, I see him as the strength and the stability of the offensive line. He is. This is gonna. I'm not saying he's Mean Joe Green. I'm not saying anything like that. But it feels like that kind of a move. Like we needed to redefine what it meant to be an offensive lineman in Pittsburgh. And Khan and Andy Weidel came in and said, we don't just need players. We need someone who's going to literally shift what it means. The standard was no longer the standard of the offensive line. So it wasn't just bringing someone that's talented or someone that we know. It's bringing someone that's going to teach the offensive lineman from here forward what you're supposed to be. The grittiness. I haven't really heard him talk much. He just kind of leads by example. He does his job. It makes me feel better about the rest of the line knowing we have him there. And what I'm hoping is because he's there, he won't be the best offensive lineman over the next couple of years. Not because he's gotten worse, but because he's made everyone around him better.
Next.
You want to go,
I'll
LeeAnn?
back on next. Yeah, I mean, I will say this about him. I think that we talked about this before this show, that the Steelers kept those players from like the Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Ramon Foster era. They brought those guys in close together. They kept them for a long time close together and then let them go close together. And so you saw this like huge turnover of the offensive line. And Ramon Foster talked about this once on his podcast. He said, I'm not going to say they kept us too long. And he's like, but maybe they kept us too long. And it made it hard. We kind of lost a little bit of that like Steelers way on the offense. We just didn't have those guys there teaching the next generation. They kind of all came in at once. And so while Isaac Seumalo wasn't a Steeler and doesn't have that long history with the team, he does have a history of excellence having come from the Philadelphia Eagles. He knows what it takes to win a Super Bowl. He knows what's needed. He knows how to be that quiet leader, like Zach said. And so I think he brings some of that mentality back to the offensive line that we were missing.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I love the idea because I thought last year Seumalo was the most consistent. He got off a little bit to a slow start, but he's the most consistent lineman last year. And now what you really have, because he is a very good run blocker, is you have Broderick and Isaac, who I think are the best two run blockers, although I think Fatano is going to push for this title. But I think they're the best two running back or run blockers. They're on the left side. There is a momentum. Hey, when we need a yard, we know who to go behind. I think last year we kind of got in a little bit of trouble with playing Broderick on the right side and Daniels, who's not quite the run blocker Seumalo was. So when they needed that yard last year, a lot of times they went behind Broderick, but they didn't always get it because Daniels was getting pushed into the backfield. I don't think Daniels is a bad, and we're going to talk about him in a minute. I don't think Daniels is bad, but I love the idea of our two best run blockers playing next to each other. And let's throw Darnell Washington out there at tight end. And let's, especially when we get into 12 personnel, which we're going to see a lot of this year, let's see that left side really drive and push and see what happens when Najee and Jalen are getting first contact 2 yards down the field, because I think we're going to see that a lot with these guys.
Whenever you talk about having those two run blockers on the side, I automatically get 2005 Seattle Seahawk vibes, where Shaun Alexander was great, but when you're running behind literally a Hall of Fame side of an offensive line, and then Jeremy Tooman, who was on the end, who was not a sluggish blocker. So that is what made Shaun Alexander great. You're exactly right. When you have an offense that you're saying, listen, we need a couple yards Let's just go to this side. We know we get 3 every time. It's one of those things where you just know you can get it. And so I don't think I really put that together. The second you said that, it was Steve Hutchinson and Walter Jones, right? Were the two on that side?
Yeah.
To remember Seattle Seahawks offensive lineman names means that they had to have stood out. So if we're getting near that point, this is going to be fun.
I don't know if they're two Hall of Famers, Zach, but I sure hope they are.
Yeah.
Let's move to center. Mason Cole is gone. In comes Zach Frazier. From where? West Virginia.
I was hoping you were going to finish that because I'm like, I know you're leading me somewhere.
Right.
Very excited.
I'm not from West Virginia.
He has a great name.
So
fan of the name.
What's that?
Big fan of his name. Automatic connection.
Automatic.
So he's projected to be the starter. Again, good, solid guy. Of course, he'll be the anchor of that offensive line. In comparison, okay, well, not in comparison. And guys, you'll jump in on this right here. This just popped in my head. Does Zach Frazier, in your opinion, does he have any Maurkice Pouncey traits in him?
That's what I hope for. It's what I believe at the moment the aim should be.
I mean, obviously, but I feel like it's so soon to say that when he literally hasn't played a single down of professional football yet. Do you know what I mean? I think there's some things about him that make that like a possibility, like the wrestling skills. Do you know what I mean? I think the way he keeps his center of gravity down nice and low, like Maurkice used to. I mean, so like from what you saw him doing in college, I think there's some traits that he possesses where it looks like it could go that way. But I think it's really hard to compare anybody to Maurkice Pouncey when he hasn't even played like a legitimate professional. He hasn't even won the starting job yet.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I mean, Pouncey was more of a Dermontti Dawson type.
Yeah.
And Dermontti Dawson might be the best pulling center of all time.
Yes.
Pouncey was good. He was mobile. And ultimately, I think Pouncey is a Hall of Famer. But I think, and I don't even want to really, Frazier reminds me a little bit more of Webster, who was more, hey, I'm going to push on a run block, and if you're going to rush me, that's fine, but you're just going to hit a wall. I don't see Frazier.
He is that gritty kind of center like Webster.
Yeah, I see him more in that mode. Like, I'm going to beat you physically, not athletically.
Let me say, too, that I think one of the mistakes that we make, and we do this to, look, not just unique to Steelers fans. I think it's everybody. I think we have somebody good, and then we want to compare the next guy to that somebody, and that's not always a fair thing. I think look, Kenny Pickett, I'm not saying that this was his only problem, but I think trying to come in on the heels of Ben Roethlisberger and everybody wants to make these comparisons about the two, I think that's unfair. I mean, it's what happened to poor Mac Jones in New England. And, it happens to these guys. You come in behind somebody great. How do you ever compete? And so, I hope that for whoever Zach Frazier most emulates out of Pittsburgh, I just hope that he embraces this and goes in as himself and plays to his strengths and really finds a way to fit into this line. Because I think we need to start him right away. I don't think we should wait.
Yeah.
If he doesn't start, it means that we have problems right off the bat. It's not saying we don't have depth players that could step in if needed, but he should start if everything goes right.
Yeah, if Nate Herbig's our starting center the first year, I'm looking square at Pat Meyer and Mike Tomlin and saying, this is why you should not have gotten a 3-year extension, because you played these games with Broderick Jones and Joey Porter last year, and could it cost you a couple? I think it did cost us a couple of wins early in the season. I don't want to see. Look, I'm on record. We all talked about, what we think to the Super Bowl. I don't think this is Super Bowl year. Would I be ecstatic? Am I rooting for it? Sure. But I don't think this is a Super Bowl year. So you play these young guys and let them get the experience. And if that maybe hurts Russell Wilson a little bit at the beginning, personally, I don't think it will. I think it will help Zach Frazier right off the bat to be with a veteran quarterback who can, hey, Zach, I don't need you to make the calls. I'll make the calls. We're good.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's why I don't want Justin Fields to start right off the bat. Do you know what I mean? I don't think Fields is ready. I think he needs time to get his confidence back, to learn a strong system, to have all of those things happen for him. And so I think that because Russell Wilson is such a strong quarterback, I do think with such a young offensive line, just as such a young offense in general, I think he can come and settle things down some. He'll be
teaching, mentoring and teaching. Yeah.
But what I know about offensive linemen, very few offensive linemen are fans of rookie quarterbacks. And so I have to imagine that Semualo and Daniels, even Broderick Jones, only had 1 year, want Russell Wilson there. They're like, we want this guy, not the leadership thing, but just rookie quarterbacks are unpredictable and they have the wrong muscle memory they fall back on. And trying to block for someone that you don't know what they're going to do next has to be the most frustrating thing as an offensive lineman. And I've only coached offensive linemen overseas. I've never actually played it. So there has to be a positive from the Russell Wilson starting, and I think that would be it.
I think it helps, but I don't think we should sell Justin Fields short. He's been 4 years in the NFL. He's not a rookie.
He's not a rookie.
Yeah. I think he's the greatest at pre-snap reads? No. But I do think he can bail himself out with his feet and his legs. I think it would put a lot of pressure on Seumalo and maybe James Daniels to a point to make the calls for Zach Frazier if Justin Fields is in. But, I mean, at this point, does anybody really think that Justin Fields is going to beat out Russell Wilson? I think Russell Wilson has to have a month of bad games, really bad games, to not be the quarterback at this point.
I think Justin Fields has a legitimate shot at being our future. Do you know what I mean? I just don't think that starts in August.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, I think he's got a real shot at it. I think Wilson is what everybody keeps saying he's going to be, which is there to, fill in for this year, try to revitalize his career a little bit, and hopefully teach and instruct Justin Fields and get, him the knowledge he needs to be able to take over in a stable system.
In order for Justin Fields to start, multiple things have to happen, because for Russell Wilson to start, he just has to maintain, just go and do your job. For Justin Fields to win, not only does Justin Fields have to play A+ in training camp and consistently, Russell Wilson has to be bad. Yeah, so correct, that's why it doesn't line up to me that I don't want it to line up that Justin Fields would go in, because a lot of people have this Madden mindset. Let's just throw Justin Fields. If Justin Fields starts a game, it means something's gone wrong with the plan.
Yeah. Or Russell Wilson, knock on wood, got hurt and can't go that week.
Yeah, no thank you.
What a strange knock on wood.
I don't want Russell Wilson to get hurt. I mean, I was not a fan of him coming, but now hearing all these reports and how many people have changed their tune on him.
He's here now. What choice do you have but to cheer for him? What good does it do to cheer against him? You're not cheering for your team to fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say it again, LeeAnn. Say it again. Say it again.
Most fans aren't cheering for their team to fail. There's always a few.
I don't know. Steelers social media, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
It really is.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
Guys, the right guard position.
Hey, James.
The right guard position.
At least for now.
This is going to be interesting right here. So, and I'm sure you're going to take shots and more shots at the right guard position. But again, fire away. LeeAnn, you first.
I don't really have any shots to take, to be honest. I mean, I don't have any. I mean, for what we've got, I think he's he's the best option at that position. And so I don't know what point there is at really taking a shot at him. Do you know what I mean? I think, like Zach said earlier, if he's the worst player you've got on your offensive line, then, that's not too bad. I mean, nobody's got a whole offensive line that's just full of nothing but Hall of Famers, So I think that he's been consistent. I think he's been reliable. Is he great? No. But is he the worst ever? No. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Zach or Bob?
LeeAnn just touched on everything. It's James Daniels represents the growth that we've had in the offensive line over the last little bit, because you could take shots at him, but they would all still be an improvement over what we've had before. So I think a big reason that we're talking about James Daniels in this sense isn't as much about James Daniels, but more about the fact that we trust Mason McCormick potentially to be the next guy. If we didn't have someone behind James Daniels that, we drafted, then I don't think we would be talking about this as much. But so I would say maybe this says a bit more about McCormick than it does Daniels, but I think what it says about the line overall is that we are growing and moving in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah, and it's James Daniels last year. I think the Steelers will end up getting exactly what they were hoping for out of him when they signed him to a 3-year deal. 3 pretty good years. He's not a Pro Bowler. He's not great, but like to LeeAnn's point, if he's your worst guy on the offensive line, you've got a pretty good offensive line. Now, I think Mason McCormick will push him. I think I just watching him in college, and I want to see it on the field. But if it translates, Mason McCormick in college was probably his equal, and if it translates at all to the same level on the field, he's probably a better run blocker right now than James Daniels. That being said, it's a big leap from the FCS to the NFL. Daniels is a better pass protector, and you're gonna want that, especially at the beginning of the year, especially if you can establish that you're going to run the power stuff to Sayamalu and Broderick Jones' side. James Daniels next to Fatano, who we were going to talk about next. Okay, there's some that won't be as strong a side, but it's not a disaster. It's not a Kevin Dotson who ended up going somewhere else and being pretty good. But let's face it, when he was playing guard for the Steelers, it was okay. It's a race between Dan Moore and Kevin Dotson, whose guy can get to the quarterback or the running backs first. I mean, Rusty Gates is about as good as you could expect from those guys. So Daniels is better than that. So do I think he'll start all year? I think if he doesn't, it won't be because he played bad. It'll be because Mason McCormick is just that much better. I really don't see us going 3 rookie offensive linemen to start. We should go 2. We may get to 3, but at worst case scenario, Daniels is a free agent. Do we really want to pay him $10, $12 million next year when we can throw McCormick in there for less than $1 million? No, I think ideally Daniels finishes out his contract, is the starter on a playoff team, helps the Steelers win a playoff game, and then by the end of the year is, okay, McCormick is close enough or past you, and maybe you've become the swing guard at that point.
To Bob's point too about that, I think about starting 3 rookies at the beginning of the year. We're talking about the beginning of the year possibly being the easier half of our season. You certainly don't want to blow games because you're giving all these guys time to grow when you're going to need them to be solid down the road. So I think it's a risky experiment to put 3 in for the first few games. I think what you get out of Daniels. I think it's enough to work with the other guys as rookies.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Mason and Daniels at worst right now are neck and neck equal and having the veteran. I think Zach and the last guy we're going to talk about are so much better than the other options. You have got to put them on the team.
That's like almost a different story. Yeah.
Looking at James Daniels and how he plays his position, it's not like when the opposing team, they put 2 on one side, they'll double team, and you don't know who's going to rush or who's going to drop back. But there are times where James Daniels, there are 2 in front of him, and James had of course he's an interior lineman, wasn't fully sure of how to handle that. That was kind of an Achilles on the offense. That was my main concern because a lot of times, you get the defense lineman shoot up a gap, here comes a sack, and again, a lot of those sacks came from the right side, the Steelers' right offensive side of the line. So one could say it's Daniel's fault. One could claim that, but it's offensive things. It's offensive as a team.
Yeah, but Ray, the typically your left edge is going to be your best pass rusher, right, and they're going against the right side. So Daniels isn't a great player, but I think he's been average to above average. I think he got a bad rap, especially not so much last year when he was playing next to Broderick and Chooks, but the year before when it was Colin Dotson and Dan Moore. I mean, that was a train wreck. And a lot of the stuff coming up the middle was Dotson looking over here, Mason Cole getting blown back, and Daniels going, I can't block 4 guys.
Yeah.
So,
according to PFF, Daniels only allowed 1 sack last year.
yeah, I think he's a pretty good pass blocker.
Yeah.
He is.
When I think
to me, it's kind of crucial to where, on certain plays that you say, okay, you need a third down. You need a first down. It's third down. Come on line, protect the quarterback. He'll make a play, and you'll get a first down. And it doesn't happen, but that's a part of the game.
My quibble with him is I can remember several runs to the right side and in short yardage situations where you kind of knew Broderick was your best run blocker on the outside, so you were trying to go to Broderick. But I really would have rather they gone to say Amalu, even though Dan Moore was next to him, play would have got blown up too. But you could always see, okay, Broderick's pushing, Daniels is at best just getting pushed back or holding right there. And Najee especially, I can remember a couple times where he ran right into James Daniels' back and just got stuffed. I mean, like I say, he's a good player. I personally, if he's our worst offensive lineman, and I think he is, and LeeAnn said this, I think we're good if he's our worst guy. Could Mason McLaurin potentially be better? Yeah.
I think we had a lot of weak links on the offensive line. And I think, unfortunately, the offensive line is a bit like a chain reaction, so where things start to break down, everything looks bad. And like you said, one player who's maybe mid-level, like James Daniels, can't pick up the slack for everybody else. So I think that reflects badly on him when it isn't necessarily all his fault. You know what I mean? There was a lot of bad stuff going on that line.
What were you thinking, Jack?
My question about James Daniels is I can see if James Daniels suddenly has really good guys around him and like we said, doesn't have to pick up slack, all of a sudden he excels. And what I'm wondering is, and this is looking a year ahead, if we're going to get to the end of 2024 and say, well, we really don't know. James Daniels is one of the better offensive linemen we have, but Mason McCormick is making progress as well. And you're going to have a Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing. If they both prove that they've made growth, who do you keep? Are we going to get in a situation? And for me, it's about consistency on the offensive line. If you have 5 guys that started most of their games together, and James Daniels is part of that, and we win playoff games and our running game is great, do you mess with that just because Mason McCormick was a draft pick that you trust? That's what I'm looking for. So it's so many prove-it years in 2024, and James Daniels could see it that way if he doesn't accept his role as a 3-year guy and move on, which I doubt he would as a competitor.
Yeah, well, that being said, Zach, too, the one thing I would say is, even though we have all that cap space, Pat, George Pickens, one of the quarterbacks, I mean, we're going to eat up that cap space really quick, and paying Daniels probably, a $10 million contract, if it's equal, I think he's the guy you got to say goodbye to. I think
also if you're just swapping that one guy out, it might be somewhat disruptive to the offensive line, but I don't think it's not somebody who's completely unfamiliar.
Exactly. Which brings us to our last guy.
Woohoo!
I think we're all in happy agreement with this guy. Look at him. What's up, Troy?
I'm gonna go first on this one here.
Okay.
Go for it.
Troy Platanu. This guy, he has been in beast mode ever since he was in college, and the way he just protected, Michael Penix Jr. He didn't do that good in the national championship against Michigan, but throughout the season, again, he protected Penix pretty good.
But wait a minute, Ray, he wasn't Penix's blind side.
Right.
He wasn't. That's right. But he did give some good protection now. And yes, when you look at the right side and you're a right-handed quarterback, you have a good vision of what's in front of you. You can't see behind you. But Troy has been very solid all season in college in Washington. And like I said, I look forward to seeing him starting on Sundays. And so again, good student of the game. I mean, he's very studious. I mean, he just he listens to other people, and like I said, it's just, I mean, and that's good right there. I mean, I think that's what makes you a better player.
You trust him to hit the ground running as a rookie, like first week, and even though it's you're because that's where I want him to be a starter, but I don't see last year as much of a negative as everyone does. I know it's everyone called Mark Caboli wrong cook yesterday because he decided to trust everybody in the facility, but when it comes to this, I'm like, I kind of trust their thing with Brock. That was a waste, like Bob does as much. I feel like Dan Moore, while I don't believe he should be a starter, was necessary to be a stopgap to let Broderick get to a point where he could start. I feel like if Broderick was the best person for the job and completely blew everyone away, he would have been there. So I'm wondering if that is going to play a role in this. And they're like, listen, Troy, you don't need to hit the ground running with all that pressure. Take a few games. If he doesn't, show that he's NFL ready right off the bat, I'm not worried about that if Dan Moore starts. If we're 6 weeks in and Dan Moore's still there and there's no talk of Troy, I'll get worried. But first couple weeks, I'm not going to bat too much of an eye on that.
I think you got to be very scared if Dan Moore is your starting right tackle, because number one, as recently as a month ago, he said he couldn't play there, and now all of a sudden the Steelers have clarified, hey Dan, whatever they said to him behind closed doors, now all of a sudden he can play the right side.
Right.
I'm not buying that.
He's been working on it.
Yeah, I'm not buying that at all. I think if Fatano, and again, I want to go back to this with the rookie guys over the last couple of years and Broderick. They are so much better at run blocking than a guy like Dan Moore, guys like Mason Cole, Dotson, guys like that over the last couple of years. They are so much of an improvement in the run game. If you are going to be a running offense, I would rather it be, okay, we can get 3 or 4 yards, but maybe our pass protection is not quite as good. Okay, well, we got 2 of the most mobile quarterbacks in NFL history. I'm good with the pass protection taking a week or 2 to get up to par, because I think Russell Wilson and I think Justin Fields can avoid the pass rush. What they can't do is hand the ball to Najee and watch us get pushed back. And I think if Dan Moore's on the right side, it makes us predictable.
Right.
We're always going to run to the left because we ain't going to the right.
Yeah.
Unless Mason McCormick somehow beats out Daniels, and at least for the running plays. But I don't know. I mean, I like Troy. I think he's an excellent run blocker. I think he very much like Broderick. He climbs. And that he climbed in college. I think he'll climb in the pros. I disagree with Ray. Penix, I mean, he was okay, but he's the left tackle was the right tackle in that offense. So do I think he's going to transition to right tackle? Great. Yeah, he's not protecting the quarterback's blind side. I think he'll come along as a pass protector, but they can do some things. They can keep Darnell Washington to help him block. Jalen's an excellent guy at picking. If he knows where it's coming from, I trust Jalen to pick that block up. So if Troy is not starting, I'm just, I'll be beside myself. I'll be all over Meyer and
is that week 1? Because like I had the week 6 disclaimer. Are you saying like if week 1 Dan Moore is the starter, regardless of the plan, then you're already in that gloom and doom place?
I'm if Dan Moore is the starter in the 3rd preseason game, I'm going to be in the doom and gloom place.
Goodness, okay.
I don't have much to add because I agree with all the things that are said about his talent, but I will say I'm going to take a little bit of a middle of the road approach on this. Do you know what I mean? It surprised me a little bit when all of a sudden the organization made a shift over who was going to play left tackle and who was going to play right tackle, when initially we'd kind of heard the opposite was going to happen. And, I think they were maybe planning on starting Dan Moore and giving him time to grow. I'm not sure, but now they've kind of changed that. And so I think it'll be curious to see what that battle looks like in training camp. Like if they really have Dan Moore playing there at right tackle, how does that look?
Well, there's one way to throw it back to the main guy of this.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
All right, there you have it. The offensive line. Moving to Pat Freiermuth. Guys, is poised. He's poised to have a good breakout year. There's also a contract year for Pat Freiermuth, and this guy to me, I love his style of play. Just hard nosed, hard working guy. Uh, he doesn't draw any attention to himself, off the field. I'm sure he probably get frustrated at times to where he doesn't get the ball where he should get the ball. But again, Pat to me is a good guy, a good tight end. Where do you stand on Pat Freiermuth in your opinion?
I think Omar's being smart, not paying him. He still may pay him before training camp, but I think he's being smart, especially with when we talk about Pat, we're talking about potential. And he had a 60 catch season for 500 yards with Ben, scored 7 touchdowns. Second year with Kenny and Mitch, he gets 63, gets over 700 yards, goes down to 2 touchdowns. Last year gets hurt pretty early in the season, and all of a sudden he falls off the table a little bit. We all think that he can be a top 10 tight end of the NFL, but the reality is that stat-wise, everything else, if you're going to pay Pat now, you have to pay him on reality, not potential. And if he's smart and bets on himself, which I think he will, then he'll say, okay, I'm going to go out and lay out and I'm going to play to my potential with these other quarterbacks, and then let's see where I go. And then also, you can make the argument that Pat could be so just upset with how the Steelers have handled his career with Pickett and Trubisky and all that stuff that maybe he wants to see before he commits to the team long term. Although I think if they offered him a near top of the market deal, he'd sign right away. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think he will want to see that. What is my role in this offense? What am I going to look like in an Arthur Smith offense? Am I going to be a top tight end? Because if I don't have these quarterbacks signed next year and all of a sudden I'm playing with a rookie in 2025, it doesn't matter if I got paid because I ain't going to get paid again. And if it's typical Steelers, it'll be a 2 or 3 year deal. He's going to be back on the market, but he's going to have to take his next contract. He might have to take a below market deal. Do I think they should sign Pat? Yes. But I don't think Pat's going to sign. I think he's going to wait and see what happens.
If you're Pat Freiermuth, you have to be like thanking your lucky stars, lighting candles at the chapel, whatever it is you do, that the Steelers got their offensive act together, at least by all appearances or on paper for this year. Because I know what you said about, Freiermuth feeling angry or frustrated about what have the Steelers done with his career. I don't think that the Steelers intentionally did Pat dirty, but I think it came out where Pat was kind of done dirty because I think it looked one way when he had Ben, and then Kenny comes in and Matt Canada's there and everything just looks terrible. You didn't have the Ben buffer with Matt Canada those next 2 years. And I think that how he got used was very spotty and inconsistent. You're right, he had the injury. And so I think he's got to be feeling like this is his chance to show, whether it's Pittsburgh or another team or just himself or whatever, that he's got the ability to do all of this and to play at a really high level. So I agree with you. I think he's betting on himself. I think it's the smart thing to do. I think he needs to show that he is worthy of that contract, and I think that the Steelers will end up giving it to him.
I agree with Patton, especially with tight ends in Pittsburgh, and we'll get to that in more detail in a second. There's context because when you're talking about a top 10 tight end in the NFL, those numbers are like really. Travis Kelce had 1,300 yards. George Kittle had 1,100 yards. T.J. Hawkinson had but then even the lower end ones, Dalton Kincaid had 717 yards. Evan Ingram had 963. Jake Ferguson, all these tight ends that you wouldn't even consider top 10 tight ends are excelling. And so when you talk about Pat, I think he's already proved he can get close to those numbers. And I kind of agree with LeeAnn. I don't think he's going to, at least I don't think he should hold it against the Steelers because of what he has now. And number one, he has it's not just the offense, but the offensive coordinator. And an offensive coordinator who has experience, who knows what to do. He knew to pass to Corey Davis and to Jonnu Smith. Kyle Pitts was a little bit overblown as coming off the injury, but he still knew how to use him. And so I think Pat Freiermuth is going to hit the ground running and excel, but I don't think he has to reach those top 5 numbers for him to be considered one of the better tight ends in Pittsburgh history. Therefore, getting him a contract that is better than most tight ends would have gotten, including Heath.
Yeah, that's a good point, Zach. And you look at 2021, Kyle Pitts' first year with Arthur Smith, he had a pretty good year, 65 catches, out over 1,000 yards. So, yeah, to your point, I mean, yes, should Pat hold it against him? It's not so much that they intentionally did him. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that,
right.
But you kept Matt Canada as the coordinator. You knew what was coming.
They kept Matt Canada too long, but I think at the end of it, all you can do is ask for them to make change. And I think the Steelers showed this offseason they're willing to make unilateral sweeping changes that we've never seen the franchise do, at least in my lifetime at this level, where you're cleaning out your quarterback room and you're getting a new offensive coordinator and you're trading a wide receiver and, you're bringing in your highest paid free agent ever. I think these are big changes for this franchise. And so I think if you're, maybe it's what do you call it? Like sour grapes or whatever for Freiermuth. But when you look at it, all you can do is, they attempted to change it or attempted to make it better. And I think they are.
Yeah, and let's face it, Pat's probably, from a pass catching standpoint, close to as good as the Steelers have ever had. But Pat is not a good blocker, and he ends up off the field a lot because, Darnell Washington. I mean, when you're losing time to Connor Hayward as a blocker, I think you got a real problem. So Pat, if he wants to help himself, he needs to raise his game up a little bit there on the blocking side. He's already there on the pass side. He just needs a quarterback who could throw him the ball.
Doesn't seem like he's gained a lot of ground on the blocking over the past few years, which surprised me. After that initial first season and a half, I kept expecting that to get substantially better, and it's not.
Well, then you mentioned about the blocking. Well, if you look back a few years, Matt Spaeth was basically the blocking tight end, and Heath was the catching tight end. So
don't sell Heath short. Heath was
but Heath could block. Heath could block.
He could block some. Yeah.
No, not block some.
No, he was a good blocker. Yeah, he was. I think Heath was a little bit more the total package than Pat. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe Pat can get there. I don't know what's holding him back from being a better blocker.
Well, he did win the best tight end award, best tight end in the nation, coming out of Virginia. So Keith Money Miller, something to think about.
Yeah, which kind of leads us to our point. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, actually, before we jump in, I had a really quick, really lightning question because I asked Bob in the studio before, and I'm curious. When you think of a tight end and success, do you look at yards first or touchdowns first, Bob?
It's a combination of both. I personally think yards. I think you need to be what Heath was for Ben. You need to be the safety blanket. If I need a first down, I know where I'm going, and that's at the yards. Touchdowns are nice, but Steelers have always been such a running team. I don't know if you can say touchdown, but first down catches, third down catches, that's what I want from my tight end.
That's what I was going to say. To me, I think that's where we rely on our tight ends, and that's what's critical. Maybe other teams are different, but in Pittsburgh, we aren't looking for him to be Travis Kelce and score every freaking touchdown. You know what I mean? We need you to be able to help us get there and help us manage our receivers and our running backs. We tend to run in touchdowns so much that, we're like a little quick short pass. It's just not something that's typically what your tight end does. So to me, it would be yardage. And like you said, first and third down.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you?
Yardage all the way. Because again, because Bob stole my words, Yeah, I mean, you do need that short yardage situation, that 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3, things like that, just to move the chains and keep that first down going. Because to me, yardage turns into touchdowns. You keep moving. Eventually, again, the red zone, And I mean, think about this. I mean, just in general, think about the red zone. Who was a quarterback? So who was a tight end for the Packers in the '90s? Brett Favre. Who we go to in the red zone? Chimura, yeah. Prime example. So of course the yardage comes first. Yardage, then touchdowns in my book.
Well,
So speaking of tight end.
Yeah, all time. I know a lot of teams are probably really proud of their top 10 tight ends.
You're proud of our top 9.
Oh, it's just, that's such a weird list. I mean, I've been looking at it for the last couple hours.
Yeah.
It's a weird list.
So for people who are listening, I just need to put this in a little context for you. We put out a poll on Twitter. We'd asked, Bob did, and asked fans, who they thought was their top tight end, the Steelers' top tight end. Obviously, Heath won by a landslide, but we had planned to talk about some of the pros and cons of like the top 3 or 4 guys, and each of us take a different person. But the disparity between number 1 Heath and then everybody else is like a Grand Canyon sized chasm that it really isn't fair.
Yeah. I was talking earlier. I think if Pat has a 50 catch, 500-600 yards, and just shows improvement, never mind takes a leap, which we all hope he'll take, he's probably number 2 on the list already. And I love Eric Green. He was the first real prototypical huge tight end. I think he had so much potential. To see him maybe have played with Ben, 20 years later, it probably would have been ridiculous. But, injuries, some drug problems. But, I mean, you think about it. I mean, he was clearly number 2. I mean, he only got 10% of the vote, but he was clearly number 2 in the poll. I mean, everybody else, you look at this list. Matt Space in the top 10. Jesse James is in the top 10.
We joked about this yesterday before we saw the results of your poll, or before you pulled this ranker list. And I said, I was surprised that some young kid hadn't come back yet and said Pat Freiermuth, and Bob and I got a big laugh out of that. Ha ha ha. And then here he is at number 4 and not that far out of it. And we just sat and spent time talking about all of the things that went wrong for Pat Freiermuth in the first couple of years, of his time in the league. And then you're looking at him at 4th overall. So then you think that begs the question, why are the Steelers' history not more laden with, excellent tight ends?
Good question.
My pick would be Jesse James. I believe he has so much potential to be a top 3 tight end. I believe. And
where do you put Jesse James on that list, Ray?
Huh?
Where do you put Jesse James on that list?
I'll leave it at 8.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But to me, he had the potential of being a top 3. I still get salty over the play where Ben threw it to him, and he at the goal line crossed.
He caught that ball.
Yeah,
and then they called a touchdown against the Patriots.
I forget who the guy is on X or Twitter or whatever you call it, but there's
Twitter, Jesse James caught the ball.
Jesse James caught the ball.
922 days or whatever. Yeah. Every day. That's serious dedication.
I know. He missed one day a bit ago, and I don't think I have seen that much sadness from someone. He apologized for it, and to his credit, he has not missed a day since. But that's dedication there, and it shows how traumatized we are by one thing. But so, Ray, are you speaking from trauma? Is that why Jesse James is that far on the list for?
Yes, hell yes.
It's the first thing that comes up when you mention his name. It's the first thing you say, Jesse James, and someone goes, "Cut that ball." It's like the first thing.
I mean, you think about how bad this is. We talked a little while ago about the left side of the offensive line with the Steelers, and Zach compared him to Seattle. He was talking about Jeremy Tooman being the guy on the Seattle Super Bowl team who was helping Sean Alexander. He's 10th on our list.
10th.
Is that the same? Because there's Jeremy Tooman and Jerame. I think there were different tight ends, right?
Jeremy Stevens. You're talking about Jeremy Stevens.
Jeremy Stevens. Wow. So I combined 2 people to create a hybrid
Stevens, I think.
No, Jeremy Stevens. Yeah.
I think it was Jermaine. Hold on, let's look.
Yeah, look up and fact check me now on this.
Where's Jeopardy music?
I don't.
Tuman, right? There's
Huh?
only the one. Jeremy Tuman is the only Tuman.
Jermaine Stevens. No, he
Jame?
was a tackle. Hold on.
The tight.
Come on.
I was talking about the tight end for Seattle in the 2005 Super Bowl that Joey Porter went back and forth with. You know, Joey
Right.
Porter's here. I think it was Jeremy Stevens, right?
Yeah. I'm Googling it. I think so.
If Jeremy Stevens is out there
Yeah,
and listening,
Jeremy
feel free to chime in.
Stevens. Spelled cute with 2 R's. Jerramy.
I thought there was some. So yeah, so Jeremy. So I misspoke. So I as I said that, I'm like, I didn't know Jeremy. He had a brother. He didn't. I just create football players.
Right.
Yeah.
I just made up somebody's name.
So, but we were talking about Heath Miller. It's interesting. He's so far ahead of everyone else on that list. But when you look at his stats, and this is not disparaging Heath. Heath is one of the. When a tight end catches a ball in Pittsburgh, you still say that sound, and it's from Heath. That means something. But those, to me, are not like all-time NFL numbers. And yet to us, he's an all-time tight end. So I completely agree.
Yeah, Steelers Hall of Honor, not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
why,
though that
why with the tight ends? That was a good question.
I think he's one of those players, though, that like his impact was something that couldn't be measured. Sort of like when we talk about Hines Ward, and like much of the impact he had on the field were things that are harder to measure. And that was a Heath Miller to me. Like he was out there, like we talked about blocking. I think he was disruptive. I think he was a distraction because he was such a reliable player when he was out there. I think he created a distraction for defenses who were worried about him, and he was durable. I mean, you have that he only missed 8 games in his career. I mean, it's true. He was never hurt. He was always there. 11 seasons. That's crazy.
When I think about Heath, I think about those first 2 passes against the Colts in that 2005 playoffs where everyone thought we'd run, and it's pass to Heath. Yeah. I went nuts on that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the last player where it wasn't expecting. You knew Heath would catch the ball. If Heath dropped the ball, time stopped for a second, and you worried if he was okay. Like I don't remember another player to that. Even Hines Ward, he dropped footballs in. Heath had these hands that never dropped footballs. So I like what you said, LeeAnn. It's an immeasurable thing about Heath that made him what he was. So I absolutely agree with that. But it's just when I was looking up his stats, I don't know why, because of who Heath is to us, I expected them to be a little, I guess, astronomical. Yeah. And then I expected the 2 Pro Bowls. I mean, I honestly thought Heath got more than 2 Pro Bowls. And so, but we still haven't. I honestly have been thinking this whole time, I don't really know why the Steelers and tight ends don't. You would think that with the running and what tight ends used to be mainly blocking, that there would be more tight ends in our history that stood out, and yet as you saw the list, there's really not.
Well,
look at this right here.
Career in the shadow of Tony Gonzalez too.
Very true.
Yeah, looking at these stats right here for Heath Miller, a lot of folks will say, well, Heath is number 1 because he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Benny Cunningham was a 4-time Super Bowl champion.
What's that?
Benny Cunningham was a 4-time Super Bowl champion.
Right. But what I'm saying is, let's take the Super Bowls out of the equation. Again, Heath Miller, when it's crunch time, when a play is needed, yes, Ben went to Heath. Always. And let's not forget now, who was Ben's roommate and training camp in Latrobe? Heath Miller.
Okay. Yeah, Ben gives Heath credit for being a college quarterback at the beginning of his career and keeping Ben straight on the plays. Hey, Ben, that's not the play. This is the play.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I did see. I knew Heath taught me how important a tight end was to a rookie quarterback. I didn't understand. I kind of knew it, but I knew a rookie quarterback needed like at least one reliable person that when I'm in trouble, you're there. And he just was there for. That's why I credit Ben a bit for his rookie season, but the reason Ben's rookie season is one of the great ones is because I don't think another rookie quarterback's been dropped into such a perfect situation for that quarterback. So, and a lot of it was Heath, and I like that story. I did not know that he was keeping him.
Just to correct you real quick, Zach, Heath came the year after Ben.
After Ben.
Yeah,
Right.
Ben's second year was Heath's rookie year.
Oh,
he was there for the Super Bowl.
It was just one of those things. Heath was never a rookie, was he? He just hit the ground as a veteran.
Like a vet. He was like always a vet.
Wow. Yeah, I it's kind of like a Pouncey thing. Like I just kind of connect all three of their careers, and it's hard to think of them separately.
Yeah, separately. It's very true. So if you're listening to the show right now, we'd love to hear what you think. We'd love to hear why you think the Steelers, what it is about the Steelers offensive culture that means that we don't have this lineage of great tight ends, through the history of our team like some other teams do. We're curious if you agree that Heath is number one, like he was ranked, or do you think maybe, Benny Cunningham surpasses him with his 4 Super Bowls or something else? Let us know what you think. And if you think anybody's missing off this top 10 list, I can't imagine how you think anybody's missing off this list, but
I was about to say, who are they going to go find?
I don't know.
Vance McDonald is on that list because of a stiff arm, and we all know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the only reason he's on there.
I think Pat's the only guy who could even remotely catch Heath on the list. Look, I like Benny Cunningham, but I think his career high was 41 catches.
It was a different time for tight ends, too.
Yeah, he's a 4-time Super Bowl champion, but I mean, he had a couple nice catches in playoffs, but you could make the argument Randy Grossman had as many nice catches as Benny Cunningham, who's also a 4-time Super Bowl champion.
Hey, Bob, here's my question to you, Bob. Heath is number one. What does Pat have to do to take that number one spot from Heath Miller?
Oh, I was going to ask that question too. Raising my damn head.
Yeah, I don't think. I think even if Heath has a great second act, I mean, Heath was so good at blocking that. And Ray, you are really underselling Heath Miller as a blocker. Heath was the complete package. He was the best all-around tight end in the NFL and was often cited as that. Did he catch passes like Tony Gonzalez? No, he didn't. That's why he didn't go to Pro Bowls and get all pros. Heath was awesome. Now, if Pat could somehow get his blocking up, or if he turns into Travis Kelce, maybe down the road he could pass him. But I think Pat has probably one more good year. He's a solid number 2 on this list, but I just can't envision him having the career, especially with the unknown at the quarterback long term right now, to pass Heath. Then again, Pat, if he wins a couple Super Bowls and has a couple of nice catches and turns into a 60, 70 catch a year guy consistently, then maybe.
Okay.
I was about to say, because of what Heath meant, even if Pat gets it together and not just gets it together, becomes one of those top 5 guys and has between 800 to 1,000 over the next 3 seasons and passes Heath numbers wise, I still think it would take him a lot more to be considered beyond Heath because of it's not going to be a numbers game. I do think at the end of Pat Freiermuth's career, he will have better numbers than Heath Miller. I honestly, I think if he just maintains,
I think he'll have better numbers, but I don't know that means that he surpasses him because I still agree with Bob that he doesn't have that total package.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, unless he becomes that blocker, and he would have to really excel at it to make us forget that he struggled earlier. It would be hard to. So he would have to be an instrumental part in several Super Bowls. Yeah, I agree. Not just play for, but instrumental in the lead up and all that. So, but
I'd settle for a playoff win at this point.
Right. Let's start with that. That was fun.
I was waiting for somebody to say that. So yeah, I knew it was coming.
That was a fun conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. We can get plenty to talk about Arthur Smith over the next. We still got some. So
let's put down the menu for next week.
Yep, we'll move Arthur to next week. He'll still be there.
Yes, guys. Another week in the books. Great talk with you all. there may be a special announcement come next week.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Is that supposed to be as devious as it looks?
To the viewers, get ready, okay? To the viewers, please tune in next week. Guys, thank you very much for coming on to talk Steeler Talk. And damn it, I didn't get a chance to go into the octagon with Bob.
We'll plan it for next week.
Off-season time.
If you watched this long, we appreciate you. Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. If you click on all those buttons for us, it makes us show up in other people's YouTube feeds. You can find us on all our social media platforms, and we put out shorts of the show, and we love to communicate with you. So please feel free to either send any of us a message to our individual pages or to the Steel City Rings podcast page. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. You all take care. Be safe. See you next week.